I began when I was young as a quite, well, serious filmmaker, and my early films had a great brooding sense of self-importance, which I look back at and I find quite amusing. While I do love those films, you know, a fan of Russian cinema and all of that. I think it was interesting that when I started in New Zealand, I wanted very much to be a feature film director, but began in music videos, and then from the success of that got into television commercials, which I really loved and enjoyed. And in fact, I loved the humour side of it and discovered that I had a sense of humour when it came to casting and performance and storytelling, which was, you know, the antithesis of what I thought I was. And I think in a way that perspective gave me a very ironic view of what humour can be, particularly in commercials, which is also now translated to sort of my later films, because I've tried to, I think, look at a whole range of styles of films. I certainly know that what I truly love as a filmmaker is personal films, and certainly from my point of view that's what I'm striving for. But I think that working with the best people in advertising, I think that applies as well, which is great. I think it's a brilliant training ground to keep fit as a filmmaker, if you know what I mean. I've directed from tiny to massive, and I do love. I mean, right now I'm doing a very large, you know, quite absurd humour piece. But there was this saying, I've kind of made my living from filming, you know, two idiots in a kitchen, and I've done a lot of ads like that. So I've done a lot of, I think, you know, smaller, simple, great story dialogue pieces. I mean, I think some of the work that I've truly loved is the Sky TV ads that I did in New Zealand. I loved working on those, and even going right back to the NEC commercial that I shot in 1994, which sort of was the first major commercial that I had done. Yeah, again, it was two people talking on a television. So I find I go from a whole range of different scripts that go from small or to massive. And I think the one thing that I've always done is been eclectic in my style, because I find while I have there's a unity to my sense of humour in a way, every script needs a different style and a different approach, I think. I think I've been lucky enough to work with some really great creatives. I think advertising is about ideas and writing, and I think the best ads that I've ever worked on have been great pieces of writing, regardless of technique or regardless of what you do as a director. But I think as a director, you often need to make the choice of how anonymous you need to be in order to make a great ad, or also how to use all your technique or all of the things and crafts that you've learned over the years to turn something that demands film technique, how to turn that into something that's realized completely. I think that is often, you know, it's often when do you show your technical skill, or when do you just sit back and go, that technical skill is going to get in the way. I think those decisions are vital as a director, not to show off sometimes. I didn't find it difficult. I mean, I think because also I grew up as a young boy at school seeing directors like Ridley Scott and Hugh Hudson and loving their work, knowing they came from commercials. And so in a way, I was quite excited to get involved in commercials, even though I was starting as a serious filmmaker. And I found that you know, a lot of the directors that go into movies go back to commercials, and I have done that. You know, I've done films and then commercials and so on, and I think shooting commercials is enormously satisfying from the point of view of having so much variety. so many different ideas to work with, so many different styles to explore too, particularly because I get a lot of eclectic work. You know, I'll get an action piece, or I'll get a big drama piece, or I'll get something that's parroting something, or I'll get something that's a one-shot commercial, and I'm lucky to work in a whole different group of styles, as I think is common with all of the finest directors that I know in television commercials. So to answer to your question, I found it not difficult because I began really wanting to work as a feature director, and I shot 3 short films before I ever shot a television commercial or a music video. So I kind of started from a filmmaking side and then got into ads and then went back to filmmaking. So they just kept feeding on each other, which was great. Well, I think certainly making a television commercial is all about collaboration. I think because you're working with somebody else's script and idea, and particularly when it also comes to collaborating effectively with a client, I think what's really important is that they feel that that you're aware of what they're wanting, and that there's a lot of, I think a lot of listening going on makes a lot of, you know, the best work, because I think the client trusts agency trusts the director, and everybody, I think, works together from that point of view. So I think collaboration is absolutely essential. I certainly think that, you know, there have been times when, you know, you work with clients or agency or people where you think that, you know, they really don't have a grasp on what they're doing or what they're wanting, and I think it works, you know, in the opposite way as well. But I do think that, you know, the best people in the industry, you want to work with them, so collaborating makes complete sense. In film, I think if you're working as an author-based director, then I think collaboration. I think you're always choosing to work with people who are going to enhance your work. That bizarre quote where you go, "Why hire a dog and bark yourself?" You know, and it's the idea of working with editors who improve your work. You know, directors of photography, writers, and of course actors. I love actors, and particularly performance has been the one thing that I've always loved doing, and I've always loved working with really good actors. Well, I think I've seen a lot of us all manage it in various ways. From you've got to be beep kidding, or you know, what are they smoking? To also, okay, how do we manage this so that we don't, you know, lose the essence of everything we've got? Know how to make changes that feel like there's a priority to it. I've always seen there's an A, B, and a C list, and there's sometimes things on the C list that don't matter, and there's things on the B list you fight for, but the A list will completely ruin what you've done. So I think it's a matter of just dealing with that, because, you know, I've always found that it's you got more chance, I think, ultimately, if you feel like you're listening to what they're saying and you're trying to give your you know, your best interpretation of what they are wanting, or trying to explain to them why what they're doing isn't going to solve anything, or that it's not working. So, but ultimately, you're making their ad. So, yeah. It's interesting. I think that I grew up in a generation, because now I'm in my mid-40s, where when I began directing, it was extremely, you know, it wasn't, the technology wasn't there for things to happen easily or instantly. So, you know, I was learning on film and cutting, and there was, I was still probably the last of the, I suppose, the generation that, where I was taught by directors and taught by editors. I was taught to cut and so on. And I think that that sort of the last of the apprenticeship period, and that, I think, helped me understand that it took a lot of discipline to want to make films. Just because it was, you know, very difficult. I mean, when I was a kid, when I was 10, starting to make films, I'd have to wait a week for the Super 8 film to come back, and, you know, and it was it was interesting. It was just like that sort of time period seems absurd now, and it doesn't make any sense. But I think also back then, when I was making my first short films and doing my music videos, I mean, I was learning everything. There was no film school when I was a young filmmaker in New Zealand, so I was self-taught with everything, and so it took an enormous amount of work. So I think for younger people in whatever area, it is about, at that age, putting in everything you can and as much effort as possible to learn the hard way, if you know what I mean, regardless of the technology, but really put in the time and the effort. That would be my advice, because I think ultimately, as you mature and grow into whatever your career is going to be, you'll be relying on, I think, the knowledge of the experience that you have. There seems to be so many different styles that are coming together and meshing together. There seems to be an overload of information that's coming in, so things are I suppose, having an impression for a shorter amount of time. So, and a lot of things are referenced from different time periods, from just 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So when you're looking at, I think, media, you're looking at influences in film and so on, it just seems like there's such a mass of different influences that it's becoming, I think, quite meshed and confused, and like some giant, super supreme pizza with a million different things coming from a million different places. And it's all happening so quickly and so fast. And in particular, it is borrowing from so many other areas that it kind of defines itself by being everything thrown together. And I think right now is, I think particularly for a lot of the younger generation, it's quite confusing going, who am I? I've got a number of films that I've been developing and working on, some television, because television seems I think now it's becoming a lot of the best film, if you could say, that's around is television. And I'm very interested in doing that, particularly in comedy. And I love ads, and I'm working, as hard as I can doing those as well. So just trying to keep doing the whole range of things is great.